Good evening, America, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. and the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. You know this now, right? Wired to Fish Coffee is the official coffee of the Solomon family and Just the News. I'm very proud to support this great coffee brand, great tasting coffee that actually takes its proceeds and gives it to Christian faith organizations and to conservation causes, something that matters to me a lot. You can get 10% off right now on all their great coffees and their mugs, their tumblers, even the Just the News tumbler. Just go to wiredtofishcoffee.com and use the promo code JustNews, or you can just point your camera at that QR code. All right, confirmation season has officially begun in Washington, D.C. It started today with the Senate nomination hearing for Defense Secretary-designate Pete Hegseth, and what a difference a month has made. Written off for dead, at least politically. In November, President Trump's pick to run the Pentagon soared through today's hearing with flying colors, deflecting Democrat efforts to discredit him over alleged personal indiscretions and demonstrating strong strategic knowledge about military strategies and technology. Republicans in unison played up Hegseth's leadership qualities and military career, with a lot of veterans in the audience cheering him on. And when the smoke cleared, the Armed Services Committee chairman, Roger Wicker, could not praise Hegseth enough for the performance he gave. He tangled with Democrats. He won the arguments. He deflected when he needed to. And if there's one exchange from today's hearing that we were covering over at Just the News that summed up Hegseth's promise of how he wants to change the Pentagon for the better, it was like this. Just watch.
Maybe if you could spend a minute just elaborating a little bit about the wokeness, where it comes from, and who will be held accountable.
The wokeness comes not from the uniform ranked, Senator, but from the political class. On day one, on January 20th, when President Trump is sworn in, he will issue a new set of lawful orders. And the leadership of our services will have an opportunity to follow those lawful orders or not. Those lawful orders will not be based on politics. They will be based on readiness, accountability standards, and lethality. That is the process by which leaders will be judged. And accountability is coming, because everybody in this room knows if you're a rifleman and you lose your rifle, they're throwing the book at you. Mm-hmm. But if you're a general who loses a war, you get a promotion.
How about that? Accountability and returning the warrior mentality to the Pentagon. That's going to be something a lot of Americans are going to champion. All right, it's a great time to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head from Los Angeles. Amanda, big day for President Trump, good performance for Hegseth. What else you got on the radar?
Absolutely. Yeah, great to see you tonight, John. And I want to get into more of the news surrounding the fires out here in California. Let's start with the media aspect of this. Jen Psaki in particular, Miss Circleback herself, and you'll never guess who she is placing blame on for the fire response.
And with these fires still burning, we are facing important questions about how to mitigate and prevent disasters like this in the future. Fact is, leaders will need to confront a very complicated and challenging reality moving forward. But right now, that is not exactly what is happening. Instead, Donald Trump and his allies are injecting half-truths, misinformation, and flat-out lies in some cases in order to score a version of political points, I suppose.
Listen, I am never surprised when MSNBC finds a reason to blame President Trump for practically anything, but blaming him for the fire response, or at least blaming him for making the response worse, doesn't seem to work. It was not the Trump administration who failed to fill California's reservoirs after record rainfall. It was not Elon Musk's fault that the fire hydrants didn't have any water. And it certainly was not either of their faults that California under Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles under Karen Bass as mayor, and a long line of Democrats before them too, might I add, have done nothing to mitigate wildfires. They haven't done anything at all except to blame climate change. And speaking of that, CNN did a whole segment around Americans not necessarily thinking climate change is the cause of these fires. Ooh, check it out.
I don't think Americans are making this connection. And the way we can see this in right here and now, take a look at the monthly change in Google searches. Look at the searches for wildfire, up 2,400%. My goodness gracious. This is the most amount of people searching for wildfires ever, going back since Google Trends began back in 2004. But look at climate change. Look at the change. It doesn't go hand in hand with wildfires. It's actually down. It's down 9%. And I also looked in California. There has been no increase in the number of searches for climate change. So the bottom line is this. Americans are definitely interested in learning about these wildfires. They're interested in following the news about the wildfires, but they are not making that connection with climate change. That's the bottom line here.
Oh, yes, you silly Americans not making the connection and thinking that it's actually the bureaucracy's fault. All right, so the one thing that we have been very short on here in California, it's obviously not the blame game. It's certainly not climate change solutions or climate change claims. It is solutions. Gavin Newsom earlier was talking about a Los Angeles 2.0 and creating a new Marshall Plan for California. But he is very short on specifics and what that actually means or looks like. I haven't heard anything at all from any of these politicians here in California about actually fixing the problem. All right, John, that's all I can rant on about all of this, because if I keep going, then it's just going to be the entire show. So let's get to our first guest of the night.
Well, speaking of the conditions for helping Congress, Speaker Johnson yesterday saying, we're going to make some changes incumbent on California before it gets federal aid. That's going to be something to keep a close eye on. Also today, and I want to ask our first guest about this, I'm excited, the House passed a bill banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. It was a historic moment. 2 Democrats crossed over and voted with most Republicans. Joining us for reaction on that and so much more, one of our favorite guests, Congressman from South Carolina, Ralph Norman. Sir, good to have you back on the show.
Glad to be with you, John and Amanda.
Good to have you on, sir. Let me start with the vote today. This was one of the promises Republicans made during the election. They got it done in the first few days of Congress. How important is it that this passed early and also that a few Democrats crossed over?
Well, it was 218 to 206. You had 2 Democrats, which really shocked me. I didn't think any of them would vote for it. Those 2 will pay a price within their party. But no, this is a long time in coming. You know, you look at what Riley Gaines went through. You look at what children all over this country have had to put up with the insane thought that men ought to be able to participate in women's sports, biological men and biological women's sports. So I was excited about the vote. I think it was clear cut what the American people wanted, but it's clear cut that Congress understands now, and they put the votes up to pass it. And you know, for Biden to do what he's done, the 4 years he's been there, it's just insanity at its height.
Yeah, that it is.
Congressman, you mentioned that these handful of Democrats are going to pay a price with their party, and I think that's absolutely right. But I do wonder if the reason they voted this way is because they didn't want to pay a price with the people who they are supposed to represent. And to that end, do you anticipate that in this 119th Congress, with a lot of these, in my opinion, common sense type pieces of legislation, not allowing dudes to play in women's sports, that you might actually have more of those Democrats who are a little less concerned about retribution from their party and more concerned about retribution from their voters?
I think as you see the midterms, you know, get closer, which will be the first couple of months in 26, I think you'll see that. And I think they're less concerned about, you know, what may or may not happen to them from within the party as to what the voters will say. So yeah, I think they will think. I think that's the reality of it. But you know, it's never made sense that, you know, men ought to be playing in women's sports. It's not safe. It's not fair. And Riley Gaines proved that, and she had the courage to speak up about it and let the American people know how she felt, and she was a victim of it.
Yeah, she's been such an amazing ambassador for the cause. Sir, today the Democrats on the Senate side were concerned about womenizing and drinking allegations against Hegseth. Didn't really delay the hearings at all, but they don't seem to be concerned about the statistic that you tweeted out just a little bit ago, and I think it's such an important statistic. 20,000 illegal immigrants who committed sexual assaults were never detained by the Biden administration. How do we get that in front of the American people so they understand the grave danger so many women are in this country right now?
Well, I think the American people get it. That's why 76 million people voted for Donald Trump. When we were in Mar-a-Lago this past weekend, he said that there are 11,000 known murderers out of the 15 to 21 million people that are illegally in America. There are 11,000 known murderers. The gangs that President Trump mentioned who make our gangs look meek and mild. But no, the American people feel unsafe. I mean, I think that played into the election because it is. You can't go on a street corner in America and not see the illegals that are here. Every state is a border state. It's not just Texas and Arizona. And thank God we're going to have a change on the 21st. And, you know, in Tom Homan, they've got a great guy who's going to start the deportation. It's going to be a fight. because the media will portray it as separating, children from families and all of that. But he's going to get the job done and make America safe. And we can't afford to put those 21 million on the dole that this President Biden has tried to do to support them.
Congressman, I know for a long time you have been sorely concerned about DEI measures in our military. And from the confirmation hearing today, it seems very apparent that Pete Hegseth wants to go from a woke culture to a warrior culture. How soon can a lot of the damage that has been done by the wokeness, by the DEI, how quickly can that be undone under someone like Pete Hegseth?
The great thing about Pete, Amanda, he understands. He's been there. Not only is he worn the uniform, but he's extremely bright, as you saw in the hearings today. It continues to amaze me the arrogance of the senators who jumped on him for not meeting with them. Why would he waste his time with the ones that he knows are against him in the first place? And the way he described how President Trump's going to take it out, he's going to do it day one. And he'll do whatever he can with executive orders. But the big thing, I think, Pete said, there's going to be consequences. As he mentioned, a general who loses a war got a promotion. That's got to stop. And I think it'll be pointed out under Pete. And he knows where to go. He knows where to look because he knows his in and out. So I'm excited, as I am with really all of President Trump's picks. They can get the job done. They know it from the bottom to the top. And it's going to be fun to watch, and with the bureaucrats scrambling who have had their way for the last 4 years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I want to talk a little bit about those California wildfires. Amanda's living right in the middle of all of that. But there's all this request now. Let's get help. Let's rebuild California. A lot of concern that California will squander the next round of money like it squandered so many other monies in the past from taxpayers. Your thoughts on what Congress needs to do to make sure that when emergency aid goes to California, because I know Republicans are compassionate, they want to help the people victimized here, that it creates the sort of change that we don't have these tragedies in the future.
Well, circle back Jen Psaki, she's the one that's disconnected and blaming it on Trump. Look, where does it make sense that you have dry fire hydrants to protect an exotic fish in the minds of the governor? Where are as Amanda mentioned, the reservoirs being emptied and the water going into the ocean? Why can't you cut a tree that's near a house or clear the thatch out? It doesn't make sense. And what should Congress do? As I said at caucus this morning, I don't think we ought to do anything. I mean, look, the victims that had their houses burned that don't have insurance, there's a reason for that. Is because the legislature and the government there put caps on what insurance companies could charge for houses, and when they had caps on them, they left. So government is not the answer. Gavin Newsom ought to resign. Miss Bass, who I served with for a while, who's mayor, ought to give up. I mean, they're the ones that are guilty of the bad laws and the bad environmental disasters. It's not climate change. It's the fact that they're not doing the things that most states in this country are doing. And you notice there's no other states like California that have uncontrolled forest fires, but it's them.
Yeah. I talked to a California resident yesterday, and they said, we don't care about climate change. We want management change in California. I thought that was such a profound thing, that they understand it's the people that are running the state that are the problem. Just remarkable.
And I feel for the people, John. I feel for them. But the fact is, why are we borrowing money right now to pay the light bill and going to give money to a state that really is the people put up with this. Yeah. And now it's coming home to roost, and the insanity needs to stop.
Yeah.
Congressman, one more before we let you go, because I know our audience is going to be interested in this. Term limits, you introduced legislation in the House, companion version over in the Senate by Ted Cruz. Chance of passage?
I think it's better. We lost in the Judiciary Committee last year by 2 votes. We're going to put it up. We've got more co-signers. It's a 88% issue, Amanda. The American people don't think professional politicians ought to live off the public dole forever. And so hopefully we'll get it passed. 6 years, 3 terms in the House, 6 years, and then 2 terms in the Senate. So I'm hoping we will get it passed, and we're going to put it up. And if it doesn't, we'll do it again. We're going to keep trying until it passes.
That's one thing we know about you, sir. You stick to your principles and you're determined. It's a great honor to have you on the show, as always. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey, America, you know, I try to eat healthy, but I'm human. Occasionally, I fall off the healthy eating wagon. You know what that's like. Even when I mess up my diet and nutrition, Field of Greens keeps me on a healthy track. What's the point of supplements or green drinks if you aren't 100% confident they'll improve your health? Field of Greens is radically better. It's the only one that promises better health or you can get your money back. Just enjoy a delicious glass of Field of Greens each day, and at your next checkup, I can assure you, your doctor will notice your improved health. Mine did, or you're going to get your money back. Each fruit and vegetable in the Field of Greens was doctor selected for a specific health benefit. I love the energy I get with Field of Greens and their better health promise. Your doctor will notice your improved health or your money will come back to you. I got you a discount to get you started. Just use the code JUSTNEWS at fieldofgreens.com. That's the code JUSTNEWS at fieldofgreens.com. Get started today. Your doctor will take quick notice.
Welcome back, everybody. Pete Hegseth was questioned for hours today in his confirmation hearing, and he seemed to come out pretty unscathed. So are the prospects looking good for him to be confirmed? And how would he help America's military if he is? Joining us now to discuss that, Senior Research Fellow for Naval Warfare and Advanced Technology at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a 26-year Navy veteran, Brent Sadler. Brent, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Brent, there were a lot of allegations slung at Pete Hegseth today. He defended himself oftentimes with humor. What did you think of his confirmation hearings today?
Well, I think I joined in a chorus of folks right and watched it, that it was a success. I think Pete Hegseth's pathway to confirmation, and it can't come soon enough for the soldiers, sailors, and airmen that need to hear and see visible leadership and getting back to the core mission, which is lethality, deterring our enemies and winning our wars.
Yeah, just that warrior culture, which I think he must have said several times, and you just see people nodding their head. There's another part of the military that's lagged, and that's keeping up with China in the warfare game. Hegseth saying today, shipbuilding is going to be a top priority for the new administration. That's important. I don't think Americans realize how much gains China has made on that front.
No, it was really refreshing to hear the new Senator Sheehy talk about this with Pete Hegseth at his hearing today. It's been a clarion call for years by those of us that know the industry and know the Navy. It's not a problem you can solve in just a couple of years. It's going to take a generation to build back 30 years of basically neglect in this post-Cold War era to really catch up with the Chinese, because we've lost that edge. We're barely able to deter them, as they are acting with this very bellicose and high confidence increasingly across the Asia Pacific. So Navy is not an easy problem to solve. It was refreshing to hear that come out, and again to affirm that re-elect Trump is making this a priority, and that Pete Hegseth will be his vehicle to execute that in the Pentagon.
Great.
Brent, I know that Washington has operated the same way for a long time, including the Pentagon. But there seems to be a disconnect between a lot of the senators who were questioning Pete today and reality. And I believe it was Senator Liz Warren who said something to the effect of, "You're so sure that, generals who come out of the Pentagon shouldn't go into lobbying positions, and yet you won't commit." And he said, "I'm not a general." She completely missed the point. And I obviously not on purpose, but she highlighted to the American people the precise reason why Pete Hegseth is perfectly fitted for this job, didn't she?
Oh, absolutely. And she got a pretty much a widespread laughter across the room on all sides, rightfully so. I mean, the further up and the more imbued into or invested personally you are into business as usual inside the Pentagon, which has been an abject failure for our nation the last 10 years, you get to a point at which you got to kind of cut bait, and that is the generals and the admirals are too invested in the way that we've been doing business, and so you have to make a break. She also was undercut because Pete doesn't have any corporate connections. That's another problem that's dogged other senior leaders in the Pentagon. And so he doesn't have any corporate affiliations or narratives that he has invested in himself. And so he comes in with a fresh agenda, one that's going to look at what works to get to that core mission of lethality.
Brent, I think you said something profound. I think most Americans don't understand just how much the slippage is. We're barely able to deter China, and it really has been a 2 or 3 decade sort of era of neglect of keeping our front lines of the Pentagon on the front lines. And I want to ask, what are some of the big slippages that need to be fixed quickly if we're going to stay competitive with China?
Well, we have to change the way we operate the Navy. The Navy is like a rheostat. You can adjust it. You can dial up the temperature. You can also move offshore just a little bit out and dial down the pressure on an adversary, and you can move around. It's the most dynamic tool that a president of the United States has to exercise American foreign policy and national defense. And so operating the Navy in a much more forceful but also judicious manner is what's called for to get the Chinese attention in Beijing that we are still a lethal force. I think they understand that, but they need to be reminded. And I think that's probably something in the first 100 days I hope we'll see.
Important.
Brent, I think that one of the best qualifiers for Pete Hegseth is the fact that he has seen combat for many years, actually. There are gaps, however, though, when it comes to state experience, diplomacy, and things like that. I want to skip forward to the assumption that he gets confirmed. Who are the types of people who he needs to have around him to fill in those gaps or to complement him?
Yeah, for one thing, I thought that gotcha question about ASEAN. Again, I've worked with ASEAN. I served in Southeast Asia. That's not really an important question for the Secretary of Defense nominee who has to lead this department in a new direction to get back to its core mission. And already there are other names that are being that Trump has put in nominees. One is Bridge Colby for leading the policy, someone who knows the region very well and understands the strategic dynamics. So Pete seems to be on the path of being well served in this regard, but his number one mission and the most important one that's going to deter the Chinese, quite frankly, is getting that building and all our armed services back to the core mission of being prepared to fight and win our wars and deterring our adversary. Number one in that, China.
Yeah, it's a Herculean task because it has slipped far from a lot of those goals, at least in the Pentagon, inside the Pentagon. Brent, I want to talk about some world events that I think will imminently greet President Trump. Iran still acting out today. Its leader gave an interview to NBC saying, "We didn't try to assassinate President Trump, as far as I know." That's an interesting qualification. And two, the Gaza ceasefire deal, Joe Biden trying to get it done before Donald Trump returns to office. Tell us what those two events mean for what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, the Middle East is important. Ukraine and Asia shouldn't also escape scrutiny. Yeah. But in the Middle East, this deal, if Hamas is smart, will take the deal and release all the hostages in the next couple of days. But they have kind of defied logic in the past, and even for their own self-awareness and their own benefit. So I'm not optimistic that deal is going to hold, and we may be seeing a tougher stance. Iran, of course, is where all of the chaos in the region emanates from. And I think the mullahs in Tehran understand that a very clear-eyed and forceful leadership is returning in D.C. And hopefully we'll see a moderation in their behavior. But again, it's probably going to require a little action to make it be felt in that capital.
Yeah.
Brent, we've just got about a minute left. I wanted to ask you about President Trump's comments regarding the hostages, that all hell will break loose. What does that look like, and are we close to that happening if their hostages aren't?
Well, it's hard to characterize exactly, nor would it be wise to try to kind of speculate. But there are numerous tools that the Biden administration has refused to use, and they know what tools in the national security quiver they could have used to apply more pressure. They chose not to. And instead, they chose a very public display of pressure on our ally Israel, rather than to turn the screws on the Iranians, notably the IRGC, and also Hamas. And I think with a new leadership, I think you'll see a willingness to actually use all of the tools.
Mm-hmm. Well, 6 days until President Trump officially takes office, so we shall see. Brent Sadler, Senior Research Fellow for Naval Warfare and Advanced Technology at the Heritage Foundation, 26-year Navy veteran. Thank you for your service, sir, and thank you for being with us tonight. All right, everybody, coming up, Congressman Ben Cline is going to be joining us next. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, America. The effort to protect women's sports and women in general had two big victories in the last week. Today, the House voted, as we told you at the top of the show, for a law that would ban transgender athletes from trying to compete in women's sports. The other one, a federal court recently ruled that President Biden's Title IX changes that would have allowed biological males into sports, that they were unlawful changes. Our next guest hails from the state that actually brought that lawsuit, Virginia. That's my home state. He's actually my home congressman, and he was a part of the team that voted today to pass that great bill. He is a congressman from Virginia, Ben Cline. Congressman, good to have you back on the show.
John, great to be with you. Amanda, good to be with you as well.
Good to have you, sir. A lot of people saying in the last couple of days, I feel like common sense is returning to Washington. You've got that court ruling, which Virginia was a big part of, and then, of course, today's vote. Tell us what's going on behind the scenes. Is this an issue that's got big momentum?
It does have momentum because the polls are overwhelming. You have about 85% of Americans who agree that biological males should not be participating in women's sports. It's just common sense. As the father of daughters, it's common sense to them, and they're not even teenagers. So they understand that men and women are different, that they should compete in their own sex category and against members of the same sex and not have to compete against each other in sports. And so the woke left has been fighting to force biological males to be allowed into women's sports. And the bill that we passed today would prohibit that and prevent that from happening. I also want to commend our Attorney General in Virginia, Jason Miyares, who led that lawsuit, which overturned the Biden administration's Title IX rewrite that would have allowed biological males in women's sports.
Congressman, I think the inception of a lot of these conversations around the trans issue actually began in Virginia, in Loudoun County, when that father was arrested at the school board meeting. Is it your sense that, I know it's an 85% issue across the country, but is it your sense that even in states like Virginia, maybe not California and New York because they're deep blue, but states like Virginia, that it's even an overwhelmingly popular idea to bifurcate the genders?
Well, absolutely. I think it's, again, common sense. Thousands of years, we've identified two sexes. Pete Hegseth was asked today in his testimony, how many genders are there? Correctly answered 2. And so you've got this return of common sense, not only to Washington and the laws that we pass, but also I think you're seeing it reflected across the country among the American people. And hopefully you'll see that reflected in the state laws and the local laws, which is where our education decisions should be made. Unfortunately, we have too many woke leftists who are trying to mandate this ideology on Americans who don't believe it, don't want to see it, and just want to continue to have their children, boys and girls, be able to compete with their own sexes in sports in school.
It's amazing. Sir, I know you went down with the Freedom Caucus to see President Trump over the weekend. You've been a big champion of cutting government. DOGE creates a moment where the whole country can rally about common sense changes. You've got some big ideas. One of those, the One Agency Act. Tell us a little bit what you learned from President Trump about this issue and how your legislation would play a big role in it.
Sure. So President Trump is, this isn't his first rodeo. He's getting ready for his second term. He knows that the Republican conference in the House is made up of different groups. And so he's politically brilliant to bring us all down in separate groups to hear from us about the views that we have. So as part of the Freedom Caucus, I went down on Friday to Mar-a-Lago. On Saturday, the committee chairs went. On Sunday, it was the moderate caucuses. And so what you have are different views, and Trump is going to get to hear from everybody. But one of the things that happened during dinner, and Elon Musk joined us for dinner on Friday night, was that we got to talk about DOGE and his efforts to streamline the bureaucracy and eliminate inefficiencies. I have a bill, because I'm an attorney and I'm on the Judiciary Committee, which would eliminate a duplicative antitrust enforcement authority. So right now there's the Department of Justice, which has antitrust authority, and the Federal Trade Commission. But we would eliminate the Federal Trade Commission's authority when it comes to antitrust enforcement and consolidate that within the Department of Justice, so that you don't have differing understandings of the law, different legal interpretations, confusion, and inefficiency in government. And hopefully this will pass. It passed the Judiciary Committee last year, and hopefully it's something the Trump administration will support.
Common sense.
Absolutely. Could this possibly be a prototype? Because there is so much redundancy in Washington that costs taxpayers way too much money. I feel like this is an opportunity to propagate this across a ton of other agencies to consolidate. Do you?
Absolutely. You have enforcement of laws, whether it's regarding competition in business, all kinds of legal offices within different agencies that overlap, that interpret statutes differently. We have too many agencies. We have too many departments. I have a feeling DOGE is going to emphasize consolidation. We're going to have privatization, so letting the private sector come in, see what he's done for space, and you understand exactly what he wants to do with privatization. And then you see deregulation, so fewer regulations, more private sector activity and success because they have fewer strings attached to all the rules that the federal government continues to impose. So all these different tools are going to be at DOGE's disposal, and I think they're going to lean in pretty hard on them.
Yeah, exciting moment. It's a real change moment in history if we get it right. There's a lot of other things going on right now. I think one of the questions Americans have is how does the Trump agenda get through Congress? Is it one bill, two bills, five bills? What's your best sense after meeting with the president, talking to your colleagues over the last several days? What do you think the most likely pathway is at least for the House?
Well, the Speaker is looking forward to leading the charge to implement the Trump agenda. He's a smart lawyer. He knows that we've got a lot of momentum right now, and that we should be trying to pass as much of the president's agenda as quickly as possible. So for those who want to first do a skinny bill and pass some immigration actions and maybe some energy actions and wait on so many other provisions until the second bill, which could come as late as fall, that's taking a chance on losing part of the agenda. So for the Speaker, who is advocating for a single bill approach, getting as much done as quickly as possible, we're hitting the ground running. The Budget Committee is going to be debating a budget resolution as early as the next week.
It's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Congressman, when it comes to President Trump's border agenda, I know in the 118th Congress, you all were very, very fired up about fortifying the border. I imagine a good portion of his executive orders on day one are going to pertain to that. But what further can the 119th Congress do to carry that mantle?
Well, I think the president is going to use every tool at his disposal, including executive orders. But you've seen tariffs being discussed. And I think he's going to make those part of the conversation. I think tariffs have become a tool of negotiation, not only for this president, but for the current president. I mean, Joe Biden was continuing a lot of the Trump tariffs on China and other countries. And so what we're seeing is that tariff threat being used to ensure that other governments, whether it's Mexico or Canada, or China, making sure that they comply with the demands of the American people, and when it comes to America First policies, making sure that American workers are first, the American citizens are first, and our secure borders are first.
Yeah, so important. Real quickly, so I just wanted to get your impression. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it today, but Pete Hegseth's performance in the Senate and his overall messaging about what he wants to do for the Pentagon.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He performed admirably under fire in the Senate hearing today, and they tried to come at him with just about everything. You know, my own senator from Virginia, I was disappointed in the tone and tenor and direction of a lot of his questions, but I think that he performed admirably and will be confirmed very soon. I think he's going to do a great job removing the woke out of the Pentagon. I think he's going to be doing a great job of helping to improve recruitment in our military, because we've got to get those numbers up and young men finishing high school are going to see a great leader in Pete Hegseth and want to join our armed forces as a result.
Yeah, exciting moments ahead. Sir, it's such a great honor to have you on. Everyone who lives in Shenandoah County knows what a great job you do in Congress. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good to have you. How about that? I get to speak to my own hometown congressman. That's always fun. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I've got a little coffee on mine, like Wire to Fish coffee. We're going to talk about some new things on the horizon with them, with their co-founder, Leah Thomas, right after these messages. All right, folks, welcome back for the commercial break. You know how excited I am about my newfound coffee, 30 plus years of the Dunkin' Donuts coffee. By the way, I had no gripe with it, but one day I sipped a cup of this extraordinary coffee. Like, what is this? It's called Wire to Fish coffee. I loved it. It had just a better taste. I started playing with it a little bit, and then I found out who the founder was and what the company stands for, how it takes its proceeds every time you drink a cup of coffee and puts those proceeds back to good use with Christian faith organizations and conservation. I'm a big outdoorsman, a Christian. It's really important that we achieve those things. Leah Thomas from that great coffee company joins us now to bring us an update in the new year. Leah, Happy New Year. It seems like 2024 was a pretty good year for Wire to Fish coffee.
It was a good year. Thank you so much for your support, you guys. We so appreciate that. We grew really well consistently and finished the year really strong. We were super excited about that because it just allows us to continue to give back to all of the projects that you mentioned, which are near and dear to our heart as anglers and as Christians.
That is awesome. So good.
Leah, I know from having these conversations with you that you all there at Wired to Fish consider this a ministry. When you have new purchasers, new customers, is it your sense that you get from them that your ministry aspect is a big reason why they support Wired to Fish?
I do think that it's a factor, a bigger factor than I think we had anticipated, to be honest with you. I did get one guy that was like, do I have to be a Christian to buy this coffee? And I'm like, no, you do not. If you love fishing and you want to give back to your fishing industry, cool. But I think we definitely see a strong push in our comments, even that we love that people love what we do around the world, that they care about us being bold enough to stand on our faith. And so we appreciate that a lot. It just energizes us to do more.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think there's another moment. I think this is the year that conservatives and Republicans actually create a banner of conservation as well. And it's cool to be in the history of the Republican Party. You had Teddy Roosevelt, you had Ronald Reagan, great conservationists, great outdoorsmen. You celebrate conservation every day, and you got some really cool projects. I like the one in Ohio. Remind everybody what you're doing in Ohio right now.
Well, it's actually North Carolina.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay. It's not your project. They'll be breaking ground here in any day now, probably early February, on some greenhouses that are going to supply plant life for man-made reservoirs to enhance bass habitat. So we're really excited about that, and looking forward to seeing how that affects their fisheries, and also how other states see how it affects their fisheries and maybe adopt some of the same practices that they're employing.
That's pretty cool.
Is that tied in with your parachurch ministry? I also want to tell people about that aspect as well.
It is not. We have several different things that we play with. Our parachurch ministry is called the Filter Project. They're out of Tennessee. They go into the slums of Nairobi and they distribute clean water filters, water systems actually, to people, to families there. One of the things that I think is really cool about how they do it is if you actually work with them, you can see where the families that are affected by your filters and where they get distributed. But along with the filter, they also tell the gospel, and they bring people to Jesus all the time, and they follow up with them. That's one of the aspects that Wired to Fish Coffee gets behind, is we're not really about one and done. We're about changing lives, and that's from, if it means giving them clean water and helping them know the love of Jesus, we want that to be a process, not just a, hey, here's a filter, oh, by the way, Jesus is pretty cool kind of thing. We really want to impact their lives, change the way that they think, and enhance their neighborhoods because of that.
Just so amazing. All right, you've got some exciting new expansions on the way, a couple new blends over the horizon. First up, I think decaffeinated. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we're getting ready to roll out a medium roast decaf. We had a lot of requests for it in November and December of last year. We are taking pre-orders on that if you want to get in early, because I expect the demand to be pretty high. We'll probably ship those in early February, but that's one of the things that we're quite excited about. And we're working on a cold brew as well. I need to get the grind right and make sure that our instructions are perfect so that we can ensure that our customers enjoy the same smooth flavor with no aftertaste with that they get with everything else that they buy from us. I expect that to come out in Q1 as well. So we're listening and we're moving.
I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm doing hot coffee and then I'm doing cold coffee. So that's going to be fun to see that. That's going to be great.
Okay, so see, perfect example here. I hear so many people talking about cold brews. What's the difference in processing or roasting between a hot brew and a cold brew?
The roasting process is pretty much the same. The grind is really the critical part. Much coarser grind is required for a cold brew. And depending upon the grind, sometimes there's a soaking process for the consumer. And so we want to get that dialed in prior to pushing it out into the marketplace so that we just keep being the great company that customers recognize that we put out good product.
That's awesome. All right. Over Christmas, I got this great photo from my uncle. He bought the Just the News tumbler package, but he had a red color mug. And I thought, well, that's pretty exciting for Christmas. And I thought, well, Valentine's Day is around the corner. Red color mug. What could those early Valentine suitors think about right now on your site to find the perfect gift for the coffee lover on their Valentine's Day?
Well, we will have the red Just the News mugs back in stock by hopefully the end of the month.
Great.
Our turnaround time on those is a couple of weeks. We have a couple of other red options on the site. I have a wine colored one that's more faith driven, that's really pretty if you have a gal in your life that likes coffee. And then we have a more affordable red one that's a drink, fish, save, repeat combo that'd be a great gift for anyone as well. So we're exploring some other surprises, but those are the mainstays at this point.
Yeah, what you're doing is amazing. I am so hooked on the coffee. My whole family is. My neighbor across the street is now using it. It's just so fun. Leah, you've done something very special, not just for coffee drinkers, but for the entire world. Great to have you on tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a bunch for having me. Can't wait to see you guys again.
Yeah, we can't wait to have you on. All right, folks, there's a lot to go do right now. I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Go to wiredofishcoffee.com. Now, the simple thing to do is you simply can just use the promo code JustNews. You're going to get a discount. But there's a really cool package we're doing right now. Wired to Fish Coffee, you get a couple of bags. You get that tumbler. It's a Yeti tumbler with the Just the News logo on it. And you're going to get a full year of VIP access to the Just the News website, which means no ads on the website. And every month you hang out with me for an hour and I answer your questions. It's a lot of fun. You get that for $65 right now. Go to wiredofishcoffee.com, look for the Just the News tumbler package, or just use the promo code JustNews and get 10% off anything you want in the store. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When I come back, Amanda and I are going to wrap up with some final thoughts on a very busy Tuesday in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. A few headlines to skip to before we head out for the evening. John, I'm going to toss it to you because I know you've kept an eye on these throughout the hour.
Yeah, a couple of big things. First, from the Hegseth nomination hearing today, Joni Ernst, originally someone that they were worried might not support President Trump's nominee to be defense secretary, tonight announcing she's going to vote for Hegseth. That's a big moment. And then Joe Biden's administration just keeps dishing out parting gifts to Republicans. The latest, just a few minutes ago, Securities and Exchange Commission filing a lawsuit against Elon Musk, saying he misled shareholders about his purchase of Twitter stock. This has been out there for a long time. It looks like they're just trying to get all of their dirt off the table before they give up power on Monday. We've got you covered on both of those at Just the News. Amanda, another thing that came up earlier today, a very important person missing from Monday's inauguration ceremony. Tell us who it is.
Yes, that's right. So former First Lady Michelle Obama, of course, she was notably absent from Jimmy Carter's state funeral, and she is not going to be at President Trump's inauguration. I don't know. I mean, she has always publicly stated that she doesn't like political life. I know that it is tradition that they show up and that they, be a part of it. But this to me is not really a big hullabaloo. Now, if Barack Obama didn't show up, not only would he miss out on the very jovial-looking conversations that he would have with Trump, just like he did at Jimmy Carter's funeral,
That was funny.
but that would be a thing.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, there's a bromance suddenly going on there. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I wonder, I don't know if it's health related, politics, just not wanting to be out in public. I don't know, but it is odd, 2 consecutive events. And she generally is by the side of Barack Obama at major events. So it's something unusual going on. We'll have to find out if it's politics or something personal, but we're going to dig into that. I remember just not that long ago when fact checkers and news media said there's no problem with Venezuelan gangs taking over Colorado apartment complexes. That's just a fake story. I heard today that a judge may have made a big decision in Colorado, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, this is something that the American people got to see with their own eyes. Very similar to what we are seeing here in California with the fires. When Democrat policies have taken hold in a city like Los Angeles, like Aurora or Denver, or any of these deep blue areas in Colorado, you start to see the effects of it. And when we first started seeing those apartment buildings getting overtaken, we started hearing about the heinous crimes of Tren de Aragua. I mean, we all have heard about cartel crimes. We've all seen the TV shows and all of that. But the things that they were doing to people were just absolutely barbaric. I am glad that we are finally starting to see some common sense in that. I hope that we will see some common sense in our situation here in Los Angeles as well. But I want to go back to something that I think we skipped over. Thomas Massie. I saw some headlines today, a big hullabaloo about him being removed from the Rules Committee because he was the one lone vote against Speaker Johnson. If I remember correctly, it was Thomas Massie who actually said, hey, I don't mind. You can take me off this committee. Yeah. So Mike Johnson did. And again, we have,
yeah, I don't think it was a big crisis. Yeah. Well, of course, don't tell that to the media. I heard today that there might be a tax agency that Americans might like, not the Internal Revenue Service, but the External Revenue Service, to start collecting taxes on foreign revenues that often have been cheated from the American people. That may be a little more popular idea for President Trump. What do you think?
I love it, and I hope that what I think could potentially happen with something like this will happen. And what I'm talking about is the tipping point between the income that's brought in by the External Revenue Service, decreasing the income that must be brought in by the Internal Revenue Service. And I hope that so many times when you hear a president talk about things he's going to do, it's like, you get halfway through the administration and the average American citizen is thinking, did they do that? I don't even know if they did that because I haven't felt it. So much of what President Trump has proposed and something like this, the External Revenue Service, these are the types of things that have the potential for the American people to know that he actually did it. Not just that he did it and it was, it was just barely a blip on the radar. That it happened, it took effect, and it gave strong effects for the American people. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's good branding too, just good marketing. It caught everybody by surprise like Donald Trump always has. I know a couple members today at the top of the show, Ben Klein and Ralph Norman, who both mentioned how fun it was to see President Trump in action, all the meetings he was having. It was kind of like La Cosa Nostra, the mob family. Different family members are coming in to see the Grand Poobah. But I think this is a real sign of how President Trump has matured and how he's going to deal with Congress. He realizes there are different factions, and he wants to get to learn each of those factions separately so he can make better decisions rather than just trying to force a marriage together at the end of a bill. I thought it was really interesting. It was a really busy weekend down at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I mean, the revolving doors down there are definitely going to need some extra WD-40.
Yeah,
I think that this is a great time for President Trump. The media's attacks on him have kind of puttered out. I'm not puttered out completely, but they're not really having any type of effect on him. President Trump is welcoming in world leaders and national leaders. Speaking of leaders in the tech space, I just saw an invite to an event that Mark Zuckerberg is hosting to celebrate President Trump's inauguration. That is not something I would have expected to see in years past, but you're seeing these factions of people coming together because they see that President Trump's policies are conducive to change. And I think that that's ultimately what a lot of people are looking forward to, just some kind of change.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Amanda.
Yeah.
Incredible.
All right, everybody, we are going to be back tomorrow with more stellar reporting by John Solomon and his other staff over at Just the News. But in the meantime, Grant Stinchfield is going to take you through the next hour. We'll see you here at 6 p.m. Eastern on Real America's Voice.